Hey there, folks. Welcome back for Module 2 of the Microsoft MD-102 course. Today's second module is called Execute Device Enrollment. You'll see every module has its own title, and if we were to go check Module 1, you would see it also actually had its own title, even though I didn't actually mention it. Alright, folks, this module comes out with three main sections we need to go and cover. Those three main sections are as follow. Manage device authentication. The second will be enroll devices using Microsoft Configuration Manager. And the third main section will be enroll devices using Microsoft Intune. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, guys. These are simply the main sections within this module. It is not a reflection of everything that's going to be covered in this module. If you'd like a better, more accurate idea of what's being covered in this module, you can get that in the video description down below, where I list majority of the topics covered in this specific module, and also added nice convenient timestamps next to each of these topics to make it easier for you to find what you're looking for, or if you just want to go and, well, revisit a certain topic perhaps. Right, folks, before we jump into this first main section, you've done it before and I want you guys to do it again. Thank you very much. Please give the video a like. It really does help me, helps the video, and then obviously YouTube pushes this out to more people out there that actually needs it, because currently there's hardly anything for this course online. And then obviously if you'd like to know when module 3 comes out or some of my other stuff, well, subscribe. Do it, don't do it, what do I care? I don't care. Right, guys, let us jump into the first main section of this course, Manage Device Authentication. All right, first up in this section, we have Azure AD Join, or should I say Azure Active Directory Join. So, folks, you might be familiar with this terminology already. So if you've been in IT, you would know on premises, when we have a physical or virtual server, one of these servers would normally be an Active Directory. And for you to be able to join the device to that Active Directory, it normally had to be a Windows device. So if you're looking at this from a client's perspective, this normally had to be an enterprise edition or a professional edition of Windows for you to be able to join that device or domain. And this is normally limited to laptops and desktops. Now, at this point in time, the whole landscape has changed as we know it. We no longer have Active Directory just on premises. We now also have something called Azure AD. Or once again, should I say, Azure Active Directory. It's pretty much the same concept. It's still a central point of authentication, except now it has moved into the cloud. It's running on someone else's property instead of your property. In this case, Microsoft. Now, to be able to join devices to the Azure AD and normal ADDS, in other words, on-premises Active Directory, it needs to be Windows Pro, Windows Professional, and Enterprise editions to be able to join that. But it is not limited to that, guys, when you look at the Azure AD. On premises, yes, you're limited to Windows devices. But if you look at the Azure AD, most non-Windows devices can actually go and join Azure AD. So this actually now includes tablets and phones, folks. Most tablets and phones, as we know it, they're probably running Android or iOS or some other new operating system. And if you go look at Huawei, they have their own operating system now. So yes, you can actually go and join phones and tablets, laptops and desktops, any device to your Azure AD. It's not limited to laptops and desktops, and it's not limited to Windows. How nice is that? Times are certainly changing, isn't it? And this is really going to become useful. I mean, if you look at the fact that half of people, or if not more than half of people, are no longer working from the office, and a lot of these folks don't necessarily use a laptop or a desktop. Some of them use their phones and tablets for the purpose of work. And for us as administrators to manage these people and their devices, considering they're now all over the place using all kinds of devices, it becomes a bit of a conundrum. And Azure AD now makes this a little bit easier. That, along with a couple of other tools which we're going to be discussing in this course, of course. Azure AD joint devices cannot be managed with group policy, guys. That's unfortunately one of the drawbacks. So yes, moving your stuff to the Azure AD will give you many benefits. Having an on-premises Active Directory will give you many benefits. But unfortunately, both of these two Active Directories have their own drawbacks as well. One of the drawbacks of having a cloud Active Directory is it does not have group policies. This is one of the reasons you'll find so many companies out there are currently having a situation where they have what we call a hybrid Active Directory environment. That means they still have the traditional on-premises Active Directory, but at the same time, they have an Active Directory in the cloud now. So they're not saving money, they're actually spending more money now because they have to go and pay for the subscription for the one in the cloud. And at the same time, they've got to maintain the Active Directory on premises. So they're not saving money. But from there on forward, it's just benefits all the way because you get to reap the benefits of both of these worlds, both Active Directories. Yes, sure, I don't have group policies in the cloud, but if you still have the Active Directory on premises, this is not a problem, folks. Now, typical scenarios for joining a device to the Azure AD. I'm not talking about the on-premises one, guys. We're talking specifically about the cloud Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So here's a couple of scenarios. It's not limited to these scenarios. These are just some common ones. So the first one is if applications and resources that you use are mostly in the cloud. Now, every company is unique as we know it, so maybe this applies to you, maybe it does not. But if you or your client's company has most of the applications and resources in the cloud, you know what? Go and get yourself a cloud Active Directory. It's going to make your life easier. Another scenario would be if you want to separate temporary accounts, might be applicable to you, it might not. Third one would be if you want to enable users to join their device to the corporate environment. So not 100% sure what Microsoft means by that, so I'm going to take a gander. I'm going to take a bit of a guess. I would say this is probably if they've got their own personal devices in their home environments. So this could be their own phone, tablet, laptop that does not necessarily belong to the company. So it's 10 to 1 going to be a BYOD scenario, bring your own device scenario. If they would like to join their own device to the company environment, or maybe it's a company laptop or whatever that they want to join to the company environment, they can actually do this themselves now. There's a catch though, and we're probably going to talk about this later in this module. For someone to be able to join a device to the Azure Active Directory, they need Azure credentials. It's not as simple as, hey, let me go click on this link or click on this button, boop, bop, there we go, and we're done. No, it's not that simple. You need to have Azure credentials, otherwise you're not going nowhere, folks. A fourth scenario here would be if you want to transition to cloud-based infrastructure. Now, I think this, to a certain extent, applies to pretty much everybody these days. Some companies are completely in the cloud at this point in time. Not a lot, but there are companies out there. And a lot of companies, if not most, are currently in what we call a hybrid situation. Some of their stuff are online, some of their stuff are on premises, some of the stuff is synchronized with one another. Something like Azure Active Directory, for example, synchronized with on-premise Active Directory. So that's pretty much where most companies find themselves at this point in time, is in a hybrid situation. And then you still get your good old-fashioned traditional companies where everything is still on premises. So if you or your client's company are looking at transitioning to the cloud, you want to start moving your stuff to the cloud, one way to do that, one place to start would be to start moving your Active Directory into the cloud. A fifth scenario here, folks, would be if you have remote branch offices with limited on-premises infrastructure. So this is some random branch in the middle of nowhere. They might not have access to internet, or the internet access sucks, it's slow, it's unstable. We all know a place like that somewhere. If you find yourself in a situation like that, maybe, just maybe, moving some of your stuff into the cloud will be a good option. Now, as you guys can see, my screen is a bit full here, and I'm not actually done with this topic, so I'm just going to quickly blank it out again. There we go. Make some room for myself. Alright, so two more things I want to mention under this topic for you guys. You can join devices to the Azure AD during the initial setup or later by using system settings. At least that's what Microsoft says. Now, considering that they mention using system settings, I'm going to go to the assumption here that this is only for Windows devices, because you can in fact also join other devices like Android and iOS, like we just said earlier. So when it comes to Windows devices, during the initial setup, when you're about to install Windows or when you just finished installing Windows, yes, you can join it to your Azure Active Directory at that point in time. but you can also go and do it later. There is many ways, folks, that you can go and join a device later or during. Now, hybrid Azure Active Directory join is a process to automatically register your on-premises domain join devices with Azure Active Directory. So if you currently have an on-premises Active Directory and you have a bunch of devices on premises, which most of us do, these devices are registered on your on-premises Active Directory. Well, if you were to acquire an Active Directory in the cloud and you were to go and synchronize that with your on-premise Active Directory, normally we use an Azure AD Connect tool to go and do that. If you were to go and do that, let's just say you're going to go and synchronize these two Active Directories. It is going to automatically register these devices in your cloud Active Directory. Very convenient. You're not going to have to go and redo all of it. Nope. As soon as you synchronize, everything that was registered on premises is now registered in your cloud Azure Active Directory, folks. All right, moving on. Azure Active Directory join limitations and benefits. So if you decide, one of your users decides to go and join a device, let's face it, it's probably going to be us that's going to be doing this for them, because users can never do anything themselves. It's always us that has to do it for them. So if you decide to go and join devices to an Azure Active Directory domain, there's bound to be a couple of limitations. There's bound to be a couple of benefits. Let's start off with Azure Active Directory limitations. So Azure Active Directory is not part of the core infrastructure, folks. Just something you should be aware of. Azure Active Directory does not have the same management capabilities as Active Directory on premises. So for those of you that don't know what ADD stands for, it stands for Active Directory Domain Services, and that is a role you would install on a server on premises, which effectively gives you the Active Directory software you would normally go and use for your user accounts and groups, but it is limited to on-premises for the most part. Now, if you were to go and compare these two of one another, both of them have their own benefits, both of them have their own drawbacks, like I said earlier. When it comes to management capabilities, Azure Active Directory does not have the same as on-premises. Now, don't get me wrong, that does not mean it's got less, it just does not have the same. There's a couple of things the one in the cloud can do, but the one on premises cannot, and then obviously vice versa. Now getting to Azure Active Directory benefits, the good stuff in other words. You've got single sign-on. So that is a huge convenience in my opinion. I love that. So if someone were to go and open a browser and they were to, for example, log into the 365 portal, Microsoft 365 portal, it's going to ask him or her for their credentials, blah, blah, blah. But as long as they keep that browser session open, if they were to open another browser tab and another browser tab, maybe one of them is for the Azure portal, maybe another one of them is for something else Microsoft-wise, as long as they keep the same browser session open, they will not need to go and sign in again and again and again on every one of these tabs effectively. That would be a real nuisance in my opinion. So you only do that on the first tab, but if you were to close the browser session entirely and open a new one, well, the whole process starts all over again. That would be an example of single sign-on. Not limited to that, but it's probably one of the most common examples I can give you folks. You also have other benefits like roaming of user settings across joint devices. So if someone, for example, has more than one device which has been joined to the Azure Active Directory domain, their settings on these different devices can in fact replicate between these devices. So to be able to do that, these devices need to be joined to the domain. You've got to have the right settings. But if I use, let's say, every day a desktop PC, which is in the office, and then one day I decide to go and use my laptop, I would ideally like to have the same settings. Wouldn't you guys agree? Well, Azure Active Directory allows you to go and do that. You also have Windows Hello support. Now, Windows Hello is absolutely not something new, folks. It's been around for ages. I mean, if you go look at Windows 10 when it came out way in the beginning, many, many years ago, it did in fact actually have Windows Hello. It came out of that. But more than half of people had no idea what it was, and if they did, they didn't want to use it, they didn't know how to use it, they didn't know what it really was. So yeah, it only really started, snowballing this last couple of years or so, where people started actually using it. It's a great extra security benefit. So it basically allows the user to also authenticate locally on the device using something like a PIN or a fingerprint instead of just using their Active Directory username and password. It's additional security. So it makes devices more secure for users in a nutshell. You also have restriction of access to apps from only compliant devices. So people will not be able to access certain applications unless their devices are compliant. You, as the administrator on the Azure portal, will be able to choose what the criteria is for a device to be marked as compliant. This can be something as simple as it needs to be in a certain location, geographically speaking. We normally do this with IP addresses, public IP addresses, that is. It can be the device has to be a Windows device, or it has to be an Apple device, in other words, iOS, has to be Android, or this device has to have a certain edition or a build of an operating system, has to have the latest security updates installed, it has to have MFA, the person has to use a certain application to access certain apps. It can be things like that. You get to specify what these conditions are. And then another benefit, which is the last one on my list here, folks, is seamless access to on-premises resources. So if you have an Active Directory in the cloud, you can use that to allow your people to authenticate. They can authenticate against the one in the cloud. And when they do that, it'll potentially give them access to resources on premises. I'm not saying that will be the case. It depends on how you set this up, of course, but it is possible to do it that way, folks. All right, now moving on to join devices to Azure Active Directory domain. So joining a device to Azure Active Directory is in fact a simple procedure, folks. Now, how exactly you do that, that's going to depend on whether we're talking about a Windows device, an iOS device, or an Android device. Once again, it's not limited to those three. Those are simply the main three and the most common ones that people will be using. So if you're looking at something like a Windows installation, you're just going to go to settings pane and you can go and do it from there if need be. And if you're looking at something like iOS or Android, it's not exactly the same procedure for these guys. With both of those, it's normally going to involve you going into either Apple's App Store or Android's Play Store, downloading their company portal app, and then via that, the user would normally go and join their device themselves to the domain. That's going to be the very last section of this module. So if you're curious about that, stay tuned. That's going to be towards the end of this specific module where we're going to be talking about joining devices to the domain. And this is going to be for Windows, iOS, and Apple, of course. So you can join Azure Active Directory after the Windows installation. So Microsoft's coming at this from a Windows perspective. Or you can do it later at any time using the settings pane. So once again, Microsoft's repeating themselves here. So this is specifically from a Windows perspective. If you have a laptop or a desktop, or your user does, they can go and join Azure Active Directory when they just installed Windows, when they just finished, or they can do it afterwards. I mean, they can go to the settings pane, or they can even join it via some other methods. There is many ways to get this done, guys. You need Azure Active Directory credentials to join a device to the domain. I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. If someone has a device at home that they would like to go and join to the Azure Active Directory, theoretically it's possible, but they will not necessarily be able to go and willy-nilly just join any device to the domain. It needs credentials. So that's kind of a way for you to keep track of what devices are on the domain, and for you to control whether people can join device to the domain or not. Ideally, most companies do not want people to join their personal devices to the company domain. They only want them to join company assets to the company domain. Otherwise, it's a huge security risk, guys. That's what it is. All right, let's talk about manage devices joined to the Azure Active Directory. So when it comes to managing these devices, group policy manages devices that are joined to on-premises Active Directory. So group policy is a wonderful thing, folks. There's over 3,000 settings you can go and configure in group policy. Now, unlike some people might believe, they think group policy is just to go and block things and turn things off. That's not entirely wrong, but it's not the only thing group policies are used for, folks. You can use it to block things, allow things, turn things off, turn things on, tweak things, configure things. You can pretty much configure anything on a server or a machine using group policies. But there's a catch. It's limited to on-premises devices. It is limited, well, I wouldn't say it's completely limited to on-premise devices, but it is limited to Windows devices. So yeah, there is that problem. If people have iOS devices, Android devices, and if these devices are joined to Azure Active Directory, it ain't gonna work, folks. So group policy is not always available or supported for devices that join the Azure Active Directory. So that's devices in the cloud now. Azure Active Directory supports integration with mobile device management applications such as Intune. So just in case you guys don't know, when we say mobile device management, this is normally an MDM. We call that an MDM short, mobile device management. You get many kinds of mobile device management softwares out there or applications. The most well-known one and the most widely used one is Microsoft's Intune, which is mentioned there. And that ironically is covered quite extensively in this specific course. When integration between Intune and Azure Active Directory is configured, a device that joins the Azure Active Directory is automatically enrolled with Intune. Now that's really going to save you a huge headache because it can sometimes be a bit of a pain to join people's devices to the Intune environment. It all depends on how your company is set up, where your users are, what kind of devices they have. That will dictate how easy or how difficult it's going to be to join these devices to your Intune environment. If you don't know what Intune does, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Now, let's move on to the second main section in this module. That, folks, is enroll devices using Microsoft Configuration Manager. Now, before you guys ask, yes, this used to have a different name. It used to be called Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. If you go look at the previous course of Microsoft, the MD-101, there this used to be called the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. Now in this new MD-102 course, the name has changed. It's no longer called Endpoint Configuration Manager. It is just called Configuration Manager. I kind of like the fact that the name is shorter. I don't like long names. It just confuses me and it feels unnecessary in my opinion. Anyway, getting right to it. First topic in this section is deploy the Microsoft Configuration Manager client. So we're going to start things off with benefits of the Microsoft Configuration Manager client, which used to have a different name. So some of the benefits, folks, is it enables tracking of software installed on a client device. Now, Intune can actually do a lot of these things as well. So whatever we're mentioning here is specific to the Configuration Manager client. Do not confuse this with Intune. So Intune, yes, it can do a lot of the things which we're about to mention here, but we're specifically coming at these topics from a Configuration Manager client, which is for the most part used on premises. So that's one of the main differences. I wouldn't say it's limited to that, but Configuration Manager is something we tend to use for devices on premises, where Intune is generally used for devices that are, well, all over the place. This is for people that's at home and that kinds of stuff. That's the key differences here. I wouldn't say it's limited to that, though. So using Configuration Manager, you can go and track what software your users have installed on the devices. So does it sound like an invasion of privacy? Yes, because it is. People have no privacy. And that unfortunately is a case that you are going to experience when it comes to company devices. And to a certain degree, believe it or not, this is also going to apply to their personal devices. If people have personal devices they use for the purposes of work, and this client happens to be installed, guess what? The company can see what applications you've got installed. The Configuration Manager also allows you as the administrator to gather inventory, hardware inventory information. So you can see exactly what device this person has. You can see, oh, okay, this person's got a laptop. Or, oh, okay, this person's got a desktop. I can see this person has got so much RAM, system memory. I can see they've got so much hard drive space. I can see this is the CPU they've got. So you can basically see hardware-wise what exactly this person has. And that's useful, folks, because if you need to do planning or deployment, that information is going to become very, very handy. The next time I need to deploy an application that might be very resource intensive, perhaps this application requires me to have 8 gigs of RAM or the users to have 8 gigs of RAM, I can't just go and willy-nilly deploy that to the whole company. What if some people do not have 8 gigs of RAM on the device? So using this inventory that you've gathered, you can actually go and check who does not have the minimum RAM requirements, and you can exclude them from this deployment or this upgrade. And when it's time to go and upgrade people's devices, if you just want to go and upgrade RAM, you know who to go and upgrade. If it's time to give people new devices, you know who to go and give new devices because you've got that list of hardware inventory. Another benefit is the ability to manage and deploy operating system and line of business applications. And then lastly, guys, the benefit here would be end user access to self-service catalog of software. I mean, we definitely don't want to go and do everything for the user. So this will actually allow the user to go and do some of the software stuff themselves. Isn't that great? So when it comes to deploying this client onto people's devices, so in other words, how do we actually get this client onto people's devices? Now, if you don't know why the heck we need to go and do that, if you do not have the client on a person's device, you cannot manage that person's device. You cannot monitor that person's device. So if your users have laptops, for example, and you want to keep an eye on those laptops or manage them, for you to be able to do that, you need the configuration manager client to be on that device. That is something that Microsoft doesn't make very clear in these courses, so I'm going to fill that gap for you guys and fill in the blanks, so to speak. So for someone to be able to manage a device with configuration manager, you need to drop the client. Some folks call this the agent. Now, how do we get that client onto our users' devices so that we can manage their devices? That's what this section here at the bottom is about, where it says client deployment options. The first one is client push. Sounds fancy, sounds complicated, but this deploys the configuration manager client directly from the configuration manager console. It copies the files to the source computer and initiates the install automatically. The initial copy process might unfortunately, increase your network traffic, so it's going to use your network. And I wouldn't really advise doing this on a lot of PCs at the same time because, yeah, you're going to make your network very slow, guys. So I would say if you only have a couple of people, yeah, I suppose you can go and use that. It's one way to get the job done. But I wouldn't advise it if you want to go and do a large group of machines. It's going to kill your network. The second option here at the bottom would be manual deployment. And it does pretty much exactly what the name says. So this deploys the agent or the client, installation source files, and a script file containing the install parameters. It executes from the ccm setup.exe file. We call it normally ccmm. So it executes from the ccm setup.exe file or from the MSI that is part of the client files. So this manual deployment option, guys, can be time consuming as a delivery mechanism. So it's slow. I wouldn't say it's going to kill your network, but it's time consuming is what it is. The third one we have here is OS deployment, or should I say operating system deployment. So when installing and setting up Windows the normal way, using a task sequence, you can then actually slipstream the Microsoft Configuration Manager client into the Windows setup and provide it with the necessary installation parameters. So instead of just doing a normal installation, this would not just be a normal Windows installation. At the same time, you would actually be dropping the client on that device. Funny enough, that's actually another way for you to get Intune on there, because for you to manage a device using Intune, you need to enroll that device into your company's Intune environment. If you want to manage something using Configuration Manager, well, you need to go and install the client or drop what they call the agents. Pretty much the same can of worms. If you'd like to manage a device with Intune, you need to enroll it into Intune. And whether you want to drop the client or whether you want to go and enroll it into Intune, both of those can actually in fact be done during the initial installation of Windows. Now, speaking of Intune, that's the fourth option here, folks. So if this device, by some chance, happens to be already enrolled into the company Intune environment, you can then manage that device using Intune. And since you can manage the device using Intune, you can actually use that benefit to get the client for Configuration Manager also onto that device. And when you do that, you can then from that point forward manage this device using both Intune and Configuration Manager client. Now they're coming at this from an Intune perspective, but guys, you can actually do this the other way around too, mind you. So if you would like to get a device onto Intune, a device that's not currently on Intune, but it happens to have the client for Configuration Manager on it, you can use Configuration Manager to get that device onto Intune. So the one can help the other. So if it's on Configuration Manager, you can use that to get it onto Intune. If it's on Intune, you can use that to get it onto Configuration Manager. So it's actually a vice versa kind of situation, but they're unfortunately only coming at this from, well, one angle, as you guys can see. Alright, moving swiftly, monitor the Microsoft Configure Manager client. So once you have successfully somehow gotten this magical client onto your people's devices, you're going to want to monitor it from time to time. So that's going to allow you to see all kinds of things about the person and the device, but we're not going to focus on all of it. We're going to focus on a couple of things in this specific topic. So the Configuration Manager client allows you to monitor and manage the devices directly inside the Configuration Manager console. So assuming you were lucky enough to get this client onto your devices somehow, some magical way, you can go into the Configuration Manager console, and then from there, folks, you can monitor and manage these devices directly. Now, as I've said before, you can do many things there, but we're going to focus on 5 specific things you want to go and monitor and manage right now. The first thing that we're going to mention here is client online status. This basically does exactly what it says. It's going to allow you to see whether this device is on or not, when it's connected to its assigned management point, that kind of stuff. The second thing you can go and check here is client activity. When you got to give it to Microsoft with the names. I mean, if you look at these names, you can kind of figure out what it's supposed to do or what it's supposed to tell you, should I say. So this client activity will show you whether this specific device that you're looking at has communicated with the configuration manager in the past 7 days. If it has not, it's considered inactive. So it's got a grace period, a buffer period, if you will, of exactly 1 week. 7 days, in other words. So whether this person is using a laptop, a desktop, or whatever, if that device, that little agent that you've installed onto that device, if it has been unable to communicate with your configuration manager for the last 7 days, it is considered inactive, and then you can go and investigate and check out why. It might be that the person is on leave, they haven't turned on the device. It might be that they've passed away, unfortunately. Maybe they got let go. I think some people call that retrenchment. It might be that they've got fired. I don't know. Could be a lot of things like that. The third thing you can go monitor here, folks, is primary user. So it's going to go and check who is the main person that's using that device, because let's face it, we've all had those situations where people will go and share a computer, borrow someone's computer. So it's going to go and check over a period of 60 days. Watch out for that, guys. There might be a question in the exam about that. They love asking questions in the exam about numbers like that. So the primary user is calculated, guys, over 60 days. It's going to go check in the last 60 days backwards who was the main person that logged in most frequently. So if someone used your PC more than you in the last 60 days, believe it or not, they're actually going to be considered the primary user. It's a very rare situation, but it is a possible situation, believe you me. The fourth thing here, guys, is operating system build. So this allows you to see the operating system version of the device without having to actually connect or perform any form of remote management. If you need to know, or if you need to see what kind of operating system build someone is running, you can use Configuration Manager Client. Now, I find it funny that they specifically mention the operating system build, because in reality, guys, you can actually use the client to see a heck of a lot more. I mean, like I said earlier, accidentally, you can use this to see what device the person is using. Intune does the same. You can see what hardware they've got, system memory, hard drive space, CPU, that kinds of stuff. You can see what operating system they've got installed, what build, what edition. You can see the applications that's installed, drivers, updates, patches. You can see it all. You can install it all. You can uninstall it all. So I find it very weird that they specifically mention only the operating system build here. But once again, that's Microsoft for you. The last thing here on this list, folks, is client check. This basically just checks the state of the device. It's going to go and check if everything is still A-okay. If it finds any problems, it's going to try and remediate those problems. So it's not 100% effective, but you know what? It is better than having nothing, because most of the time, if you think about it, we had nothing. So we can't exactly go and complain, right? Moving on to our next topic here, managing the Microsoft Configuration Manager Client. Wowza, that is a long name. That is a mouthful. So when the Configuration Manager Client installs on a device, however you get that is up to you, and successfully assigns it to a site, you can see the device in the Assets and Compliance workspace in the device's node. Now, if you don't know what they mean by that, node is actually kind of like a folder on the Configuration Manager Client. I don't know why they do that. So you've got these special folders, which they call nodes on Configuration Manager Client. And there's one of them which is called devices. If you go in there, you will find that device is now in that devices folder. So if you go and install the client on someone's laptop, and that laptop has now successfully been joined to the Configuration Manager database, so to speak, where we will find that, guys, it will be under Assets and Compliance, and then in the subfolder called Devices. That's basically what it is. All right, so then we have something called collections. Once again, I'm not 100% sure why Microsoft decided to call this a collection, because we have something very similar on Intune. We have something very similar on on-premises Active Directory and even in the cloud, but yet Microsoft does not call those the same name, which kind of raises a bit of questions. Why does Microsoft feel the need to call this stuff different names on different platforms when in reality they could just use the same name and avoid confusion? So collection, guys, is basically, let's call it a folder. It's not a folder, but let's call it a folder. So on the configuration manager, you will have these folders, which Microsoft calls collections. And in that folder is a grouping of devices or a grouping of users. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need to go and apply a setting to a group of devices, let's say it's all of the devices in the sales department, then you would go and choose that folder, in quotes, let's just say quote unquote, that folder with all that devices in it, and you're going to go to apply that setting. So that folder is now that collection. So the collection, you can give them names. The name you put on that collection doesn't matter. So I can go to create a collection that says sales department, and in that collection called sales department, I can go and throw in all the users in the sales department or all the devices in the sales department. Hell, I can go to create two different collections. I can create one that says sales department users. I can create one that says sales department devices. And if I find myself in a situation where I need to go and configure a setting or a whatever for just the users or just the devices in those departments, I just choose the relevant collection. Hopefully that clears up, pretty much what we're talking about. So if you look at Active Directory on premises, they would normally be called a group, not a collection, a group. And if you go look at Intune, which has got something pretty much identical to this, there they also call it the group. So that actually makes sense. But for some reason on the configuration manager, we call this a collection. Potato, potato, folks. It's the same thing. So with regards to collections, this represents devices or users that have some commonality in the configuration manager. Basically, like I said, everybody could be in the sales department for all we know. It allows you to perform tasks such as target a deployment or run a report on devices in the collection. So if you, for example, would like information about certain people or certain devices, you can go and choose that relevant collection and it will pull a report for that collection. So if you want, for example, report on all the people in the sales department or all the devices in the sales department, you just choose that fancy folder, in other words, that collection, wink, wink, and that will basically give you what you need. If you'd like to deploy something only to those people or those devices, once again, you just choose that collection. All right, and then we've got management options applied to devices in a collection or individual devices. So what I've got for you guys here with regards to client action, the first one is Start Resource Explorer. So what they mean by that is review inventory information about a device, such as the operating system information, memory, applications that's installed, that kind of stuff. So if you go and click on Start Resource Explorer, or if you go and use that option from the clients, that's going to go and basically give you information about that device. The second one is Start Policy Retrieval. I mean, these names are a bit confusing in my opinion. I mean, there's no way you would be able to guess what this does. So Start Policy Retrieval is to execute some of the previous client actions locally, direct from the site server. The third one here is Add to a Collection. And this one kind of makes sense if you look at the name. So Add to a Collection is to add the client directly to a collection, such as an installation collection from the object itself. The fourth one, and the last one I've got for you guys on this list here, is Client Settings RSOP. So this is to review current client settings for a given endpoint. That's basically all that one actually does. Alright folks, we have finally reached the end of the second main section. Moving on to the third and the last main section of this module, Enroll devices using Microsoft Intune. So section 2 was for the most part about Configuration Manager, and section 3 is for the most part about Intune, the other one. So there is, like I said earlier, there's a lot of similarities between these two, but there's also a couple of distinct differences between these two. So Configuration Manager is a very, very powerful tool. It can do almost anything on people's devices, but it is kind of sort of limited to devices that's on premises. Intune, on the other hand, not nearly as powerful as Configuration Manager in my opinion, but something it can do that Configuration Manager cannot is to manage people and the devices wherever the heck they might be. The catch, and yes, we know there's always a catch, and we did mention the catch before, is the devices have to be enrolled into Intune. So for Configuration Manager, you've got to have the client installed, which they sometimes call an agent. With Intune, the devices have to be enrolled into Intune for you to be able to manage them. So yeah, first topic that we've got in this section, folks, manage mobile devices using Intune. So the Intune Admin Center, this is the cloud one now. This console includes all the management capabilities that's provided by Intune. So anything that is available in Intune, you can find that in the Intune Admin Center. The Intune company portal, however, is used to self-manage device enrollment and to access published applications. Then something you guys need to be aware of, the device management life cycle. So managing mobile devices, like most IT management activities, follows a life cycle. The mobile device management life cycle contains 4 phases. So it's kind of the circle of life for your devices, if you want to go and call it that. The first phase we've got here, folks, is the enroll phase. So that's when something is brand spanking new. So in the enroll phase, devices register with the mobile device management solution. That would be Intune, guys. We call this an MDM for short. So with Intune, you can enroll both mobile devices such as phones and Windows PCs. Now, for those of you that don't know, Intune was originally designed to manage phones and tablets. But that's definitely not the only thing we use it for these days. We use Intune for phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, you name it. As long as these devices are enrolled, you can go and manage them. You can manage any device, anywhere, anytime, as long as they're enrolled. It's not limited to desktops and laptops. It is not limited to Windows. So it can be any operating system, any device, anywhere. So these devices unfortunately just need an internet connection. Otherwise, well, they're not going to be able to receive the instructions from you, and you're not going to be able to see anything that's going on those devices. The second phase of the life cycle here, guys, is to configure that device. So once you've enrolled it, you configure it. In the configuration phase, you help to ensure that the enrolled devices are secure and that they actually comply with any configurations or security policies that you might have. You can also actually automate common administrative tasks such as, configuring the Wi-Fi. You can actually go and automate that because let's face it, we don't want to go and do that for each and every machine. It's a tedious task, so you know what? Why not automate it? The third phase here, folks, is to protect. In the protect phase, the mobile device management solution, which is MDM for short, or which is Intune, this solution provides an ongoing monitoring of the settings established in the configuration phase. During this phase, you also use the mobile device management solution to help keep devices compliant through the monitoring and deployment of software updates. So you'll find some companies have what we call compliancy policies. Most actually do. It's a great thing to go and have. It's basically the next best thing to configuration policies. So if you have people working from wherever with all kinds of devices, you're going to want to make sure that these people are protected. And the way we do that is with compliancy policies. I can force these people with compliancy policies to, for example, have something like MFA, or they have to be joined to the Azure domain, or they have to have a password that meets certain complexity requirements, or they have to have a certain version of an operating system. It has to be enterprise, has to be a certain build, has to have certain updates installed. So that's to force people to be compliant. So protect is all about that. Now, guys, the fourth phase, the last phase, you can pretty much guess what that's going to be. That's basically when you get rid of all this stuff. So the fourth phase is retire. When a device is no longer needed, and this is going to happen at some point, so when it's lost or when it's stolen or whatever, this all forms part of the retire phase. So you can remove data by resetting the device. Intune, guys, has an ability for you as the administrator to go and wipe these devices remotely. You can either go and wipe the device entirely, or you can go and specify what is deemed as company data and just wipe that. But most companies I've seen will just go and wipe the entire device because, well, they're paranoid. That's what they are. All right, folks, moving on. Considerations for device enrollment. So it's not always as simple as, hey, guys, let's go and enroll all these devices. So there's a couple of things you need to keep in the back of your mind when you're about to go and enroll, such as where these people are, what devices they have. And sometimes you might have more than one method to disposal, but one might be working better for your unique environment versus, for the next company, of course. So first of all, determine the enrollment method. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's many ways. I'm going to mention 3 here because these are the 3 mentioned in this specific course. The first one is group policy. You can enroll devices with group policy, but for you to be able to do that, these devices should already be on your on-premises Active Directory environment. So if you are lucky enough to have devices on your Active Directory environment, or this is your client and their devices are already on their on-premises Active Directory environment, yes, you can then go ahead and you can actually go and use group policies to enroll these devices into Intune. But this will only work if these devices happens to be joined to the on-premises Active Directory environment. Otherwise, well, it's not going to work. Remember, group policies is an on-premises thing. Group policies do not work for Azure in the cloud. It's strictly for Active Directory on-premises. A second enrollment method would be joining the Azure Active Directory domain. So what do we mean by that? You can configure integration, guys, between your Azure Active Directory and MDM. MDM, remember, that's your mobile device management, in other words, Intune. So you can actually go and configure integration between Azure Active Directory and Intune so that when you join a Windows device to your Azure Active Directory, it is actually, in fact, automatically enrolled into MDM. So yes, it's gonna require a little bit of work for me to go and configure this integration. It's not a lot of work, but at the end of the day, in the long haul, it's gonna make your life so much easier. It's gonna be so much less work in the long haul. All you need to do is just configure integration between Azure Active Directory and the MDM, which in this case is Intune, of course. A third method, and this is the last method I'm going to mention here for you guys, is you can enroll Windows devices to MDM manually. In other words, you can enroll them to Intune manually. So by using the settings app, that's the settings app on the Windows side, guys. So if you don't know what the settings app is, that is effectively the new control panel on Windows. Does that mean the old one is missing? No, it's still there. You can still find the old control panel on both Windows 10 and 11. At least the last time I checked, it was still there. But Microsoft is actively removing it. We'll talk about that later. It's not part of the course today. So in the new control panel, which is called the settings app, if you don't know what that is, you go click on start at the bottom left on Windows 10. And at the bottom left, you'll find there's like a little gear icon. I think it looks like a sprocket. It says settings. That is your settings app, guys. And on Windows 11, if you click on your start button in the middle of your taskbar in the middle, you'll find it's like a little sprocket icon that says settings. That is your settings app on Windows 11. So whether you're using Windows 10 or 11, you go into the settings app. There you can go and join your Intune provision packages, or well, you can just go and use the company portal app, which is something we're going to be talking about in just a couple of moments when we talk about enrolling Android devices or Apple devices. So stay tuned for that in just a moment. But before we get to that, let's first talk about determining devices that are actually allowed, the criteria, because some companies don't just want any device or all devices to join their Intune environment. You can, in fact, as the administrator, specify criteria that has to be met first before someone can attempt to join their device to the domain. So this can be criteria like they have to have Windows, or they have to have iOS installed, or Android. It depends on your unique needs for your company. Some companies need their people to use Windows because they would like them to perhaps use group policies. Other companies prefer the users to use iOS or Android because there's certain settings that's only applicable to Android or iOS. So depending on what your client's company or your company requires of you, you will specify what operating system you need your people to have, what build you would like them to have. It's usually the latest. Maybe what edition you would like them to have if you've got any preferences like that. And you can go and specify whether they need to have MFA, do they need to have a password, does it have to be a minimum length, a minimum complexity requirement, that kinds of stuff. Last thing on this list, folks, determine if enrollment is optional or mandatory. In some companies, it's optional. Other companies, not so much. It is compulsory for people to join their devices to the company Azure domain or the company Intune environment. So you need to go and determine as the administrator whether this is compulsory or whether this will be optional. I can't tell you whether it should be or not because every company is unique in the end of the day. Alright folks, there's about 3 topics left before we reach the end of this module. The first one of those 3 is enrolling Windows devices into Intune. And we'll talk about Apple and Android, and then we should pretty much be done. So when it comes to enrolling specifically Windows devices, this is for the most part going to be laptops and desktops. Many ways you can go and do that. I'm going to list a couple of methods here for you guys. It's not the only methods, but still it's a pretty decent list. I think there's 8 that I'm going to list for you guys. The first one is just to go and add a work or a school account. The second is enroll an MDM only. So you can go and, as the user, you can go and enroll only into Intune using the settings app. You can do it manually yourself. You can go and do the Azure Active Directory Join method. You can do that straight out of the box. So as soon as you've just installed Windows, you as the administrator or the user, you can then immediately join it to Azure Active Directory using, well, something like the settings app once again. Also Azure Active Directory Join, but this can be autopilot, user driven. So autopilot, for those of you who don't know, it's not really a topic we have discussed yet, so I don't feel comfortable explaining it at this point because I feel some people might not know what it is. But it is in the course. Microsoft threw it in here, so I've got to mention it to you guys now, but yet we did not actually explain it, which is why I don't like this new course of Microsoft, because they talk about topics which was not discussed, and if you don't know what autopilot is, you're going to have no idea what I mean. So I'm just going to very quickly give you an idea. Autopilot is a nice way for us administrators to manage devices which we've never actually gotten our hands on. So if someone bought themselves a brand spanking new laptop, but they never brought it into the office, so we as administrators can go and configure that laptop for them, join it to the domain, give them the windows they need, and the updates and programs and settings they need. How the heck do we give people what they need then? Autopilot is where that comes into play. As soon as that person gets that brand spanking new device, when they're just about to start for the first time, and they type in their company email address and credentials, it's going to see, oh, you are from that company. Okay, you need the following apps and the following settings and blah, blah, blah. A drawback to autopilot is it uses a lot of data, and it can obviously take quite a while. So the user can do this themselves, user-driven deployment mode. And when we talk about Azure Active Directory Domain Join again, once again, autopilot, it can also be self-deploying mode. So it can do it self, or the user can do it. So it's basically the same thing. The one is just the user and the other one is self. Then we have enroll into MDM only, but this will be a device enrollment manager. We've got configuration manager co-management. So if this device happens to be on configuration manager already, in other words, you've got the client for configuration manager on that device, you can use that to get this device onto Intune. You remember we spoke about this earlier in the previous section. I told you guys, if a device is on Intune, you can use that benefit to get that device onto configuration manager. If that device is already managed by configuration manager, you can use that benefit to get it onto Intune. So it's a vice versa kind of benefit. The last one I'm going to mention for you guys here is Azure Active Directory Join, which is bulk enrollment. So you can actually, in fact, go and do a bulk enrollment, guys. Now, moving on to our second last topic in this module, enrolling Android devices into Intune. So enrollment of an Android device is typically performed by the end users, guys. It's very rarely that we are going to be doing this. The end users themselves will normally have to go and do this in most cases. So the first thing that needs to be done here is download the company portal app from the Google Play Store. See, I told you guys we're going to be talking about the company portal app again. So Android, those guys need to go to the Google Play Store to get their apps. And in this case, you need to go and look for the company portal app. And once they've got that app, open the company portal app, sign in with a work or a school account, and then lastly, guys, the user just needs to follow the on-screen instructions. As simple as that. It's actually very, very easy and very, very user-friendly. Apple is very much the same concept. It's just as easy and just as user-friendly. A couple of different steps, but just as easy. Now, speaking of Apple, so how do we enroll iOS devices into Intune? That's Apple for those of you that don't know. Enrollment of iOS devices can be done by the user, or, this is where it gets interesting, automatically. So to enroll an iOS device using the company portal app, basically the same method as the Android method, you go and download the company portal app, same app you need to go and download, except you can't download from the Play Store because that's an Android store. So iOS devices, they use the Apple Store. So you're going to go to the Apple App Store and you're going to go download the same application. You're also going to go and sign into the app with your work or school account, and then once again, you just follow the instructions, guys. Well, folks, believe it or not, we have reached the end of the second module of the Microsoft MD-102. I hope you guys have learned something. I hope you've enjoyed the course. If you have, do your homie a favor. Give the video a like. Hell, if you would like to know when the next one comes out, subscribe. Or don't. I don't care. Guys, before you disappear on me, a special thank you to all of you that is sponsoring the channel at this point in time. I appreciate every one of you guys. So here is a list of all the Patreon sponsors. Guys, thank you very, very much. Hopefully there will be more of you guys sponsoring the channel very, very soon. You can find the link for Patreon at the bottom of this video and also in the video description down below. And also a thank you to all the PayPal sponsors. There's a list of them on the screen. Thank you very, very much. All of you that's been clicking on the thanks button below the video, and even those of you that's been buying me a coffee, thank you very much, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel yourself, you can find all that information in the video description down below. Lastly, folks, there is a Discord server. It's been around for a while, still kind of small at this point in time, but it's been around for some time. It's called Free IT Training on Discord. For those of you that have Discord, that know what Discord is, the link to that server is in the video description down below. It's a small community of IT people. It's growing very, very fast. So this is for people that is in IT, that is studying something in IT, or that wants to help other people studying in IT. I myself am also in that server. You can talk to me on that server. You can ask me questions. You can ask each other questions. If you see someone struggling and you happen to know the answer, you can go and answer their question, of course, as well. Right, folks, see you in module 3 of the Microsoft MD-102 course.